most delicate diplomat is actually a human Deathworlder. The emerald silk whispered against crystal as Ambassador Zara Chen glided through the corridors of the Nexari diplomatic station. Each step calculated, each breath measured. The binary stars beyond the transparent walls painted her pale skin in shifting hues of amber and crimson, while her diplomatic smile remained perfectly composed. Just another day pretending to be fragile. The station orbited the twin suns like a jewel suspended in starlight, its crystalline architecture refracting light into prismatic rainbows that danced across every surface. Beautiful, deadly, if you knew what to look for in the micro-fractures along the support beams. Zara knew. Ambassador Chen, the chittering voice belonged to Cathara, the Cathara delegation's lead negotiator. His compound eyes tracked her movement with predatory interest, mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his insectoid species. How lovely you look today. So delicate. Zara's fingers tightened imperceptibly around her crystal wine glass. The surface developed hairline cracks. Why, thank you, Cathara. You're too kind. Too kind, too obvious. The clicking pattern beneath his words carried undertones she recognized: threat assessment, territorial marking. Her enhanced hearing caught the subtle harmonics that most species missed. He was measuring her, testing her. If only you knew what you were testing. The reception hall sprawled before them, a cathedral of light and shadow where three civilizations attempted the delicate dance of diplomacy. Gaseous veiled delegates floated in their containment suits, their forms shifting through spectrums of blue and violet as they communicated through color alone. Ancient sorrow's representatives moved with reptilian grace, their scaled hides gleaming like polished armor. And then there was Prince Thane. He stood apart from his delegation, tall even by sorrow's standards, his amber eyes scanning the crowd with predatory intelligence. When those eyes found hers across the room, something electric crackled in the space between them. Dangerous. Intriguing. The Sorrow's Prince seems quite taken with you, Cathara observed, his mandibles spreading wider. Perhaps he finds human fragility appealing. Zara laughed, a sound like crystal bells that made several nearby delegates turn their heads. I'm sure I wouldn't know what you mean. The wine glass cracked further in her grip. She set it down carefully on a passing server's tray before it could shatter completely. Conversations washed over her in waves, 3 different languages, multiple dialects, whispered secrets and barely concealed threats. Her mind processed them simultaneously, filtering, categorizing, filing away every useful detail. The Veil delegation's chromatic discussions about resource allocation. The Sorrow's nobles debating territorial boundaries. The Cathara's coded cliques about profit margins and weapons shipments. That last one made her pause. If you'll excuse me, she murmured to Cathara, already moving before he could respond. Her heels clicked against the crystal floor, a careful rhythm that disguised her true speed. To watching eyes, she appeared to drift through the crowd like smoke. In reality, every movement was precisely calculated to intercept conversations, plant herself within listening range, gather intelligence. Prince Thane intercepted her path near the observation deck, his massive form blocking her route with casual authority. Up close, his scales held an opalescent quality that shifted between emerald and gold. Ancient scars marked his jaw and throat, old dueling wounds that spoke of a warrior's past. Ambassador Chen. His voice carried the slight sibilant accent of his people, but his pronunciation was flawless. I was hoping we might speak privately. Were you? She tilted her head, studying him with eyes that appeared soft and brown but caught details most would miss. The slight tension in his shoulders, the way his claws extended just a millimeter beyond their sheaths, the rapid pulse visible at his throat despite his calm demeanor. And what would the Prince of the Sorrow's hegemony wish to discuss with a simple human diplomat? Simple, his laugh was a low rumble that vibrated through the station's floor plating. Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what you are. Their eyes met and held. In that moment, Zara felt the familiar thrill of being truly seen, not the careful mask she wore, but something deeper, more honest. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "The peace talks concern you," she said. Not a question. His micro-expressions were easier to read than most emotional transparency was apparently a sorrow's trait. "They should concern us all." Thane stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that her enhanced hearing caught easily. "There are irregularities in the proposed accords, details that don't align with what my government discussed in preliminary negotiations." Zara's mind raced through possibilities. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggests someone profits more from conflict than peace. Before she could respond, the formal dinner chime echoed through the hall, a crystalline note that seemed to emanate from the station itself. Delegates began moving toward the grand dining chamber, a graceful migration of silk and scales and shifting light. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation later." Thane offered his arm in the formal manner of his people, claws carefully sheathed. "I find myself curious about your perspective on these matters." Zara placed her hand on his scaled forearm, noting how her fingers appeared almost childlike against his bulk. Appearances, as always, deceived. "I'd be delighted, Your Highness." The dining chamber was a masterwork of architectural artistry, curved walls of pure crystal that captured and reflected light from the binary suns, creating an aurora effect that painted every surface in shifting colors. Tables floated on repulsor fields, their surfaces set with delicate crystal settings that sparkled like captured starlight. Zara found herself seated between a veiled diplomat whose containment suit hummed with barely audible energy fluctuations, and a minor Kithara noble whose compound eyes never stopped tracking movement around the room. Across from her, Prince Thane observed the proceedings with the patience of a natural predator. The first courses arrived on floating trays managed by nearly invisible servo droids. Delicate arrangements that catered to the dietary needs of all three species, synthesized proteins for the Kithara, mineral suspensions for the Veil, raw flesh for the Sorrows, and carefully prepared vegetarian dishes for the humans. Zara ate with apparent enjoyment while her enhanced senses cataloged everything around her. The Kithara delegation had shifted to a coded clicking pattern she'd never heard before, rapid staccato bursts that carried undertones of urgency. Military terminology, temporal markers, coordinates. Her grip tightened on her utensils. The silver fork bent slightly under the pressure. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" Thane's voice carried just enough concern to seem polite, while his eyes held genuine worry. "Of course." She smiled brilliantly, setting down the damaged utensil and selecting another. "I was simply contemplating the remarkable craftsmanship of these pieces. Such delicate work must require incredible skill." "Indeed." His gaze flicked to the bent fork, then back to her face. "Sometimes the most delicate-appearing things possess surprising resilience." "He sees too much." A server droid approached with the next course, a crystalline bowl filled with what appeared to be liquid starlight, steam rising from its surface in impossible spirals. The servo mechanism whirred as it extended the tray toward her. Then the tray tilted. Time stretched. The scalding liquid arced through air toward her face and chest, droplets catching the ambient light like tiny suns. Around the table, conversations continued, oblivious to the danger. The servo droid's optical sensors showed no awareness of malfunction. Zara's reflexes took over. Her hand snapped up, catching the entire tray before a single drop could fall. The motion was too fast, too precise, too controlled for normal human reflexes. The metal bent under her grip, leaving perfect finger impressions in the servo tray's surface. Silence fell around their table like a physical weight. "My goodness," Zara laughed, her voice pitched perfectly to suggest surprise and relief. How terribly clumsy of me to startle the poor droid. I must have knocked into its sensory array. She set the tray down carefully, the liquid still perfectly contained within its crystal bowl. No harm done, thankfully. The servo droid's optical array swiveled toward her, processing. Its vocal unit crackled. This unit registered no impact with Ambassador Chen. Diagnostic shows no malfunction in motor control systems. Servo droids are so literal, Zara said with another musical laugh. I'm sure it was just a momentary sensor ghost. These things happen in space stations. But Thane's amber eyes had gone very still, very calculating. His gaze moved from her face to the finger impressions in the metal tray, then to the way she'd caught liquid that should have been impossible to intercept with human reflexes. Remarkable reflexes, he murmured, his voice carrying layers of meaning she pretended not to hear. Pure luck, she replied smoothly. Fear does strange things to the body's response systems. Yes, his smile showed just the tips of his fangs. I imagine it does. The dinner continued with surface normalcy, but Zara felt the weight of observation like a physical pressure. Every movement was scrutinized, every gesture analyzed. The Cathara delegation had gone silent, their compound eyes reflecting the ambient light like mirrors. The veil's chromatic communications had shifted to rapid amber flashes, alarm patterns. They know something changed. Question is, what do they plan to do about it? As the formal evening wound down, delegates began dispersing to their quarters or private meetings. Zara excused herself with diplomatic grace, her emerald silk dress swaying as she moved through the crystalline corridors toward her assigned suite. The silence of the residential sector felt different from the reception areas, deeper, more watchful. Her footsteps echoed differently here, the acoustics revealing the true nature of the station's construction. Hollow spaces behind the walls, hidden passages, places where sound could travel in unexpected directions. Her suite's door dilated at her approach, recognizing her genetic signature. The interior was a study in understated luxury, curved walls that followed the station's organic architecture, furniture that seemed to grow from the floor itself, and a magnificent view of the binary stars beyond. Zara moved to her personal terminal, fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced efficiency. Diplomatic correspondence, trade negotiations, cultural exchange protocols, the usual detritus of her official duties. But beneath the surface layers, protected by encryption algorithms that would challenge military-grade systems, lay her real work. Intelligence reports, communication intercepts, pattern analysis of suspicious activities across the three civilizations. Her enhanced vision processed streams of data faster than any normal human could follow. Financial records showing unusual weapons purchases. Communication logs with gaps that suggested deleted messages. Personnel files with anomalies that indicated falsified identities. And there, buried in a seemingly routine maintenance report, was the pattern she'd been looking for. Someone had been accessing restricted areas of the station, multiple someones from all three species, always during shift changes when security coverage was minimal, always in sections that provided access to critical infrastructure. Zara's blood ran cold as the implications crystallized. The scalding liquid accident hadn't been random, it had been a test. Someone wanted to know if Earth's ambassador was more than she appeared. But who and why now? Her terminal chimed softly with an incoming message, priority encryption, source, unknown. The text appeared in standard Galactic common, but the phrasing carried subtle linguistic markers she recognized. The Veil Prime's morning address tomorrow will be his last public appearance. Suggest the Iron Ambassador attend to her own security. Iron Ambassador. Only one person had ever called her that, and he'd been dead for 3 years. Zara stared at the message as it automatically deleted itself, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone knew about her past. Someone knew what humanity's ambassadors really were. And someone wanted her to know that the peace talks were about to become a battlefield. She moved to the suite's communication array, encoding a message with encryption keys known only to Earth's diplomatic security service. Her fingers trembled slightly as she composed the text, not from fear, but from the effort of maintaining control when every instinct screamed at her to act. Possible assassination attempt on Vale Prime during tomorrow's ceremony. Request immediate support. Situation may be compromised beyond current parameters. The message compressed itself into a quantum burst transmission that would take hours to reach Earth. Too long. Far too long if tomorrow's peace signing became a massacre. I'm on my own, again. Zara closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability in the privacy of her suite. When she opened them again, the fragile diplomat was gone. In her place stood something far more dangerous, a human Deathworlder who'd spent years pretending to be prey. Tomorrow, the galaxy might finally learn why Earth's ambassadors were chosen not for their weakness, but for their terrible, carefully hidden strength. The binary stars wheeled beyond her window, their ancient light painting her pale skin in shades of gold and crimson. Beautiful, deceptive. Just like everything else in the galaxy that wore a mask. Sleep eluded Zara like smoke through her fingers. She stood at her suite's observation window, watching the binary stars rotate in their eternal dance, their light painting geometric patterns across the station's crystal architecture. Beautiful, hypnotic, and utterly inadequate to distract her from the message that had burned itself into her memory. The Vale Prime's morning address tomorrow will be his last public appearance. 3 hours until dawn cycle. 3 hours to unravel a conspiracy that could shatter the fragile peace between 3 civilizations. Her enhanced metabolism had already processed the adrenaline from the dinner accident, leaving her with the crystalline clarity that came after combat readiness faded. The problem wasn't the assassination attempt. She could handle that with one hand tied behind her back. The problem was maintaining her cover while doing it. Unless I don't. The thought whispered through her mind like temptation. How easy it would be to simply act, to move with the speed and precision that marked her as what she truly was, to stop pretending that human diplomats were anything other than apex predators in silk gowns. But Earth's reputation hung on that pretense. Humanity's place in the galactic community depended on other species seeing them as civilized, peaceful, harmless. Even when we're anything but. Zara pulled up her suite's holographic interface, fingers dancing through layers of encrypted data. The station's schematics materialized around her, a 3-dimensional maze of corridors, service passages, and hidden chambers that most species couldn't navigate without assistance. But human spatial reasoning was different. Better. She memorized the layout in minutes, identifying 17 different routes to the ceremonial chamber where tomorrow's peace signing would take place. Her personal files contained everything Earth's intelligence services knew about the key players. Vale Prime HFY, ancient even by his species standards, his gaseous form contained within technology that bordered on miraculous. A philosopher king who'd spent centuries building bridges between civilizations that had once tried to exterminate each other. Cathara of the Cathara, ambitious, ruthless, with financial ties to weapons manufacturers across 3 sectors. His compound eyes missed nothing. His mandibles smiled while his mind calculated profit margins measured in lives. And Prince Thane, especially Prince Thane. Third in line for the Sorrow's throne, military strategist, warrior poet, whose tactical brilliance was matched only by his political idealism. The kind of leader who actually believed peace was possible. The kind who made dangerous enemies among those who profited from war. The kind I could fall for if I'm not careful. Zara dismissed the thought with practiced efficiency. Personal feelings were a luxury she couldn't afford, not when the galaxy balanced on the edge of war. She sealed her suite and slipped into the corridor beyond, her diplomatic credentials granting her access to areas most delegates never saw. The station's service levels were a different world, utilitarian passages lined with conduits and maintenance panels, where the elegant architecture gave way to brutal functionality. Here, her enhanced senses served her well. The subtle vibrations that indicated which passages were monitored, the acoustic shadows where conversations echoed from upper levels, the electromagnetic signatures that revealed hidden surveillance systems. Time to go hunting. The Cathara delegation's quarters occupied an entire section of the diplomatic ring, a necessity given their species, complex social hierarchies, and territorial instincts. Zara moved through the service corridors that ran parallel to their living spaces, her modified hearing parsing the clicking conversations that drifted through the walls. Most of it was routine complaints about the station's temperature, discussions of trade agreements, idle gossip about other species' mating habits. But in the deepest chamber, where Cathara held court with his inner circle, the conversations carried different undertones. Military terminology, weapon specifications, temporal coordinates. Zara pressed herself against the service wall, her body temperature automatically adjusting to match the surrounding metal. Her breathing slowed to nearly nothing, her heartbeat dropping to levels that would trigger medical alarms in most species. In this state, she was effectively invisible to thermal sensors, her presence no more significant than the station's background systems. Confirmation from the Sorrow's contact, Cathara was saying, his clicks sharp with satisfaction. Prince Thane will be positioned exactly where we need him during the ceremony. And the human, another voice female, speaking in the rapid dialect of the outer hives. The Chen woman remains an unknown variable. Today's test was inconclusive. Inconclusive, if only you knew. Perhaps we should eliminate her as well. Earth's ambassador program has always been suspicious. Too convenient that their diplomats never seem to suffer the same casualties as others. Zara's enhanced vision caught the micro-vibrations in the wall as Cathara shifted his weight. His mandibles were clicking in the pattern that indicated deep consideration, a habit she'd catalogued during months of diplomatic meetings. No, the human dies with the others, but not by our direct action. Earth's response to losing an ambassador is unpredictable. Better to ensure she's simply in the wrong place when the Veil Prime's guards begin shooting. The guards, of course. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The assassination wouldn't come from outside, it would come from within. Veil Prime Zephai's own security detail, compromised and turned against him. The chaos would provide perfect cover for eliminating other moderate voices, including Prince Thane. Zara backed away from the wall, her movements flowing like liquid shadow. She'd heard enough to understand the scope of the conspiracy, but not enough to identify all the players. The Cathara were involved, but they weren't the architects. Their clicks carried the subordinate harmonics of hired muscle, not masterminds. Someone else was pulling the strings. The observation deck called to her, a neutral space where she might think clearly without the station's political undercurrents clouding her judgment. She made her way through corridors that grew increasingly empty as the night cycle deepened, her footsteps silent on the crystal floors. The deck stretched out like a crystalline promontory, offering an unobstructed view of the binary stars and the space beyond. Nebulae painted cosmic brushstrokes across the darkness, ancient light from civilizations that had risen and fallen before any of the current species had learned to look up at the night sky. Trouble sleeping. Zara didn't jump. Her enhanced reflexes had tracked Prince Thane's approach for the last 30 seconds. But she allowed herself a small smile as she turned to face him, noting how the starlight painted his scales in shades of silver and gold. I find space stations too quiet, she said, which was true enough. After years on worlds where every sound carried the potential for violence, the artificial silence of manufactured environments felt oppressive. Your people must find them equally unsettling. On the contrary, Thane moved to stand beside her at the observation rail, his massive form radiating warmth in the deck's controlled atmosphere. Sorrows evolved in cave systems. Enclosed spaces feel natural to us. It's the open void that makes us uncomfortable. And yet here you are. Duty has a way of overriding comfort. His amber eyes reflected the starlight, giving them an almost hypnotic quality. Besides, I find myself curious about Earth's representative. You're not what I expected. That makes two of us. What did you expect? Someone more typical. The other human diplomats I've encountered tend toward predictable patterns, cautious, reactive, focused on avoiding conflict rather than resolving it. Zara studied his profile, noting the way his jaw muscles tensed when he spoke of other humans. You've met many of my colleagues. A few. They tend to last about 6 months before requesting transfer to safer postings. Thane's voice carried undertones she recognized, disappointment mixed with resignation. I sometimes wonder if your species truly understands the nature of galactic politics. If only you knew. Perhaps we simply approach conflict resolution differently than other species, she said carefully. Human methods can appear indirect to those accustomed to more straightforward approaches. Straightforward. Thane's laugh was a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plating. Yes, that would describe Sorrow's methodology perfectly. We tend to believe that problems should be solved with clarity and decisive action. And if decisive action isn't possible, then you find another way to be decisive. His gaze shifted to her, studying her face with predatory intensity. What would you do, Ambassador, if you discovered a threat to these peace talks? If you learned that someone planned to use tomorrow's ceremony as an opportunity for violence? The question hung between them like a challenge. Zara felt the weight of his attention, the sense that this conversation mattered far more than its casual tone suggested. I suppose, she said slowly, that would depend on the nature of the threat and the resources available to address it. Resources. Thane moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his scaled skin. What if I told you that I suspect several delegates aren't what they appear to be? That tomorrow's ceremony might be walking into a carefully prepared trap. He knows, somehow he knows. I would ask what evidence you have to support such a serious accusation. Evidence? His smile revealed the tips of his fangs. What if the evidence was nothing more than instinct, the sense that predators recognize in each other? The words fell between them like stones into still water, creating ripples that reached far beyond their immediate meaning. Zara felt her carefully maintained mask slipping, revealing glimpses of what lay beneath. Predators, she repeated softly. My people have a saying, the strongest hunter is the one who appears weakest to the prey. We use it to describe certain military strategies, but I've come to believe it applies to diplomacy as well. Thane reached out, his clawed fingers barely brushing her arm. Even that light touch carried enough pressure to dent metal, yet his contact was gentle as silk. You're not what you appear to be, Ambassador Zara Chen. The question is, are you what these peace talks need? Before she could answer, the station's emergency lighting activated harsh red illumination that painted the observation deck in shades of blood and shadow. Klaxons wailed through the corridors, their sound designed to penetrate the auditory ranges of all three species. All delegates to emergency stations, the automated voice announced in 3 languages. Hull breach in Section 7, atmospheric containment protocols in effect. Zara's enhanced senses immediately parsed the sounds echoing through the station structure. The particular vibration pattern of explosive decompression. the electromagnetic signatures of emergency containment fields activating, the subtle shift in air pressure that indicated massive atmospheric loss. But underneath those obvious signs lay others: the acoustic fingerprint of shaped charges, the electromagnetic residue of military-grade breaching equipment, the chemical traces of industrial cutting agents. "This isn't an accident. We need to go," she told Thane, already moving toward the deck's exit. Her diplomatic training warred with her combat instincts protocol demanded they proceed to the nearest emergency station and wait for official updates. Every fiber of her enhanced biology screamed at her to investigate, to hunt, to neutralize the threat. "The breach is 3 sections away," Thane said, but he was already following her. "Emergency teams will handle containment. Emergency teams won't handle what's really happening." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Thane's amber eyes sharpened, his predatory instincts responding to the certainty in her voice. "What do you mean?" Zara paused at the corridor intersection, her enhanced hearing tracking the chaos spreading through the station. Delegates screaming in 3 different languages. Security teams moving with the distinctive gait patterns of combat readiness. And underneath it all, the subtle sounds of coordinated movement, too organized, too precise for genuine emergency response. "Section 7 houses the diplomatic archives," she said, pieces clicking together with crystalline clarity. "Financial records, treaty negotiations, communication logs. If someone wanted to eliminate evidence of a conspiracy, they'd stage an accident to justify destroying the data." Thane's expression went very still, and use the chaos to mask other activities, like positioning assets for tomorrow's assassination. "We need to get to Section 7, Zara said. "If I'm right, this accident is just the opening move. The section's been evacuated. Security will have established a perimeter. Then we'll have to be creative about our approach." Thane studied her face, and she could see him processing the implications of her words, the confidence in her voice, the way she moved through the station as if she owned it, the growing certainty that Earth's seemingly fragile ambassador was something far more dangerous. "Lead the way," he said quietly. "Gods help me." Zara sealed her diplomatic mask firmly in place and led Prince Thane into the chaos that would either preserve the peace or burn the galaxy down around them. Either way, the pretense was over. Section 7 was a tomb. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, while containment fields hummed with barely restrained energy where the hull had been breached, or appeared to have been breached. Zara's enhanced vision caught details the standard lighting would have hidden: scorch marks that followed 2 perfect geometric patterns, metal edges that showed signs of precision cutting rather than explosive damage. "Definitely not an accident." "The archives are through here," Thane whispered, his voice barely audible above the station's emergency systems. His scales had shifted to deeper hues, a stress response that made him nearly invisible in the red-tinted shadows. They moved through corridors littered with the detritus of hasty evacuation, personal belongings abandoned in the rush to reach safety, diplomatic pouches scattered across the crystal floors like fallen leaves, and underneath it all, the particular stillness that came after violence. Zara's nostrils flared, catching scent traces her enhanced olfactory system could parse in ways that would seem impossible to other species. Ozone from energy weapons, the metallic tang of spilled blood, the distinctive chemical signature of Cathara pheromones released during combat arousal. "They've been here recently." "Ambassador." Thane's clawed hand closed around her wrist gently, but with enough pressure to get her attention. "Your pulse just doubled." "Observant, too observant." "The stress of the situation," she murmured, forcing her enhanced metabolism to slow its responses. "I'm not accustomed to emergency situations." His amber eyes studied her face in the crimson light. "No, I don't think that's it at all." Before she could respond, movement flickered at the corridor's far end, a shadow detaching itself from deeper shadows, moving with the distinctive gait of Cathara combat forms. Then another, and another. 3 of them armed, moving in formation. "Thane," Zara said quietly, her voice carrying harmonics that would trigger fight-or-flight responses in most species. "When I say run, you need to trust me and do exactly that." "What are you?" The first Cathara rounded the corner, its compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting like fractured mirrors. Combat armor gleamed over its chitinous exoskeleton, while energy weapons hummed in its manipulator arms. Its mandibles spread wide in what might have been recognition. "Or hunger." "Prince Thane," it chittered, its translator rendering the words in precise Galactic common. "Ambassador Chen, how unfortunate that you chose to investigate the emergency. Accidents do seem to follow humans, don't they?" Zara stepped slightly forward, placing herself between the Cathara and Thane with movements that appeared casual, but positioned her for maximum tactical advantage. Her enhanced nervous system was already calculating distances, weapon trajectories, environmental variables. 17 different ways to kill them all. Pick one. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her diplomatic training keeping her voice level despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "We were simply concerned about the delegates who might have been trapped in the breach." "How thoughtful." The Cathara's mandibles clicked in patterns that registered as amusement to her enhanced pattern recognition. "Unfortunately, you've seen too much. The archives must appear to have been destroyed in the accident, along with anyone who might have discovered irregularities in the peace negotiations." The other 2 Cathara spread out, their movements coordinated with military precision, flanking positions, overlapping fields of fire, no escape routes except their service hatch, 12 meters, 2 seconds at full speed. "Run," Zara said. "What?" "Run." The world exploded into motion. Zara launched herself forward, her enhanced musculature propelling her across the distance between her and the lead Cathara in a blur of emerald silk and lethal grace. Her diplomatic mask shattered like crystal, revealing the predator that had always lurked beneath. The Cathara's compound eyes tracked her movement, impressive reflexes for an insectoid species. Its energy weapon swiveled toward her with mechanical precision. The capacitor whined as it charged for a killing shot. It was still whining when Zara's palm strike caved in its thorax. Chitin cracked like thunder. The Cathara folded around her hand, its exoskeleton no more resistant to human bone density than paper was to a blade. Green ichor sprayed across the corridor walls as its internal organs ruptured from the impact. "One down." Time stretched like taffy as her enhanced nervous system processed the tactical situation. The second Cathara was already firing, coherent energy beams searing the air where she'd been standing. The third was moving to flank, its weapon trained on Prince Thane's position. "Can't let them hurt him, won't let them hurt him." Zara rolled beneath the energy beam, her silk dress tearing as she came up in a crouch beside the fallen Cathara's weapon. Her fingers closed around the energy rifle technology designed for four-armed insectoid anatomy, but her enhanced dexterity adapted instantly. The second Cathara's compound eyes widened as she brought the weapon to bear. Its mandibles spread in what might have been surprise or terror. She pulled the trigger. Coherent energy lanced across the corridor, punching through combat armor like it was made of silk. The Cathara's scream was a harmonic shriek that would have shattered the eardrums of most species. For Zara, it was simply noise. 2 down, 1 to go. The third Cathara had reached Thane's position, its weapon pressed against the prince's scaled throat. Its mandibles clicked in rapid patterns, not communication now, but the autonomic response of a cornered predator. "Drop the weapon, human," it chittered, or I paint these walls with royal blood. Zara rose slowly, the captured energy rifle held loose in her grip. Her emerald dress hung in tatters, revealing the lean muscle beneath, the physique of a human Deathworlder finally unveiled. But it was her face that would have terrified most species. Gone was the diplomatic smile, the careful mask of civilization. What remained was something far older, far more honest. The expression of apex predation. You know, she said conversationally, I've spent 3 years pretending to be fragile. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? The Cathara's grip tightened on its weapon. I said drop. Zara moved. Not the blur of enhanced speed she'd used before, but something else, a flowing, economical motion that seemed almost lazy in its precision. Her free hand flicked out, catching the Cathara's weapon arm and twisting with just enough force to snap the joint. The insectoid's scream cut off as her other hand closed around its throat, lifting its entire body off the ground with casual ease. Its legs kicked frantically, seeking purchase that would never come. The thing about being an apex predator, she continued, her voice never changing from its conversational tone, is that you learn to appreciate the hunt. The patience, the moment when prey realizes what it's actually facing. The Cathara's compound eyes bulged as her grip tightened. Green ichor leaked from between her fingers. But sometimes, she said, patience becomes a luxury you can't afford. Snap. The corridor fell silent except for the distant hum of the station's emergency systems. Zara dropped the Cathara's body, stepping back to survey the carnage with detached professional interest. 3 enemies neutralized. No collateral damage. Threat eliminated with minimal expenditure of resources. Just like the old days. Zara. Prince Thane's voice was very quiet, very controlled. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of what she must look like: silk dress in tatters, green ichor staining her hands, the cold efficiency of a trained killer written across her features. This is where he runs, where they always run. But Thane wasn't moving away. Instead, he stepped closer, his amber eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed in ways that had nothing to do with her torn clothing. That, he said slowly, was magnificent. What did you say? Magnificent. His clawed hand reached out, stopping just short of touching her ichor-stained fingers. I've seen Sorrow's warriors fight. I've watched Cathara combat specialists work. I've never seen anything like what you just did. I killed 3 sentients in under 30 seconds, she said, testing his reaction. I broke their bones like they were made of glass. You protected us both with surgical precision. Thane's voice carried overtones of something that might have been admiration. Every movement calculated, every action necessary. No wasted effort, no unnecessary cruelty. You are exactly what you appeared to be, just not in the way anyone expected. He's not running. Why isn't he running? Most species find human combat capabilities disturbing. Most species haven't spent their lives studying military strategy. Thane finally closed the distance between them, his scaled fingers intertwining with her blood-stained ones. I told you earlier that the strongest hunter appears weakest to the prey. You've spent years perfecting that deception. And that doesn't frighten you. Frighten me? His laugh was a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plating. Zara, I've been watching you for months. The way you move through crowds like flowing water. The way your eyes track movement 3 rooms away. The way other predators unconsciously defer to your presence without understanding why. His amber gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. I've been hoping you were exactly what I suspected, what these peace talks desperately need. And what's that? A guardian terrible enough to make the galaxy's monsters think twice about testing Earth's patience. The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible divide. Zara felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of constraints she'd carried for so long they'd become part of her identity. "He sees me, actually sees me." "The archives," she said, forcing herself back toward their mission. "We need to confirm what they were trying to destroy." "Of course." But Thane's eyes lingered on her face, as if memorizing the moment when Earth's ambassador had finally shed her mask. They moved through the ransacked archive chambers, Zara's enhanced senses cataloging the systematic destruction. Files deleted, hard storage devices shattered, communication logs wiped from quantum storage arrays. But whoever had orchestrated the attack had made one crucial error. They'd underestimated human redundancy protocols. "Here," Zara said, her fingers dancing across a hidden interface built into what appeared to be decorative wall paneling. "Earth's diplomatic corps learned long ago to maintain independent records." Data streams flowed across holographic displays, financial records, communication intercepts, personnel files that painted a picture of corruption reaching into the highest levels of all three governments. The conspiracy wasn't limited to extremist factions or criminal elements. This was orchestrated betrayal by the very leaders who'd publicly championed peace. "Sacred ancestors," Thane breathed, his scales shifting to darker hues as he processed the implications. "The Hegemony Council's own treasurer, my uncle's closest advisor." "It gets worse." Zara highlighted another data stream. "Tomorrow's ceremony isn't just about assassinating moderate leaders. They're planning to frame Earth for the attacks." The evidence was damning: falsified communication logs showing human diplomatic staff coordinating with terrorist cells, financial records indicating Earth had been secretly funding extremist groups, even manufactured biometric data suggesting human operatives had been present at previous accidents involving peace negotiators. "They want humanity expelled from the galactic community," Zara said, her voice carrying the flat tone of professional analysis. "Earth becomes the convenient scapegoat for galactic instability, while the real conspirators profit from renewed conflicts." "How many of your people know what you really are?" Thane asked suddenly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how many Earth ambassadors are trained killers disguised as diplomats?" Zara met his gaze, weighing the risks of honesty against the growing certainty that their survival depended on complete trust. "All of us," she said simply. "Every human diplomat assigned to potentially hostile environments undergoes combat conditioning, enhanced reflexes, tactical training, weapons proficiency. We call it the Iron Ambassador program." "Iron Ambassador." Thane's expression shifted to something approaching awe. "That's what the message called you, wasn't it? The warning about tomorrow's ceremony." "He notices everything." "Someone wants me to know that my cover is blown. The question is whether they're trying to help or manipulate me into a trap." "Does it matter?" Thane moved closer, his presence radiating warmth in the archive's cold air. "Your cover was always temporary. The galaxy was always going to learn what humanity's ambassadors really are. And when it does, then perhaps the galaxy will finally understand that Earth doesn't need protection from the universe. The universe needs protection from Earth." His words carried the weight of prophecy, and Zara felt the future shifting around them like sand in an hourglass. Tomorrow's ceremony would change everything, one way or another. The only question was whether the change would preserve the peace or burn the galaxy down. "We should get back," she said. "Figure out how to prevent tomorrow's massacre without starting an interstellar war." "Together." The single word carried layers of meaning: tactical alliance, personal partnership, and something deeper that made her enhanced pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with combat readiness. "Together," she agreed. As they made their way back through the station's corridors, Zara felt the weight of pretense lifting from her shoulders. The mask was gone. The deception was over. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it as what she truly was: Earth's Iron Ambassador, terrible and beautiful in her unveiled strength. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. And Prince Thane of the Sorrow's hegemony would be standing beside her when it did. Dawn came to the station like judgment itself. The binary stars aligned in their orbital dance, flooding the ceremonial chamber with golden light that transformed the crystal architecture into something resembling a cathedral. Delegates from 3 civilizations moved through the space with practiced diplomatic grace, their conversations a careful symphony of political nuance and barely concealed ambition. Zara stood at the chamber's edge, her replacement gown midnight blue silk that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, marking her as distinctly human among the scaled, chitinous, and gaseous forms surrounding her. But those who looked closely might have noticed something different about Earth's ambassador today. The way she held herself, the predatory stillness in her dark eyes, the sense that something fundamental had shifted overnight. No more masks, no more pretense, time to see what the galaxy makes of honesty. Prince Thane approached through the crowd, his ceremonial armor gleaming like captured starlight. The formal regalia couldn't disguise the way he moved, economical, purposeful, with the controlled violence of a predator dressed for court. Their eyes met across the space, and she saw her own resolve reflected in his amber gaze. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice pitched low enough that only her enhanced hearing could parse the words. "I've been ready for 3 years," she replied. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what comes next." The ceremonial platform dominated the chamber's center, a raised dais of pure crystal that seemed to grow from the station's structure itself. Upon it sat 3 chairs representing the participating civilizations, while a 4th, smaller seat had been placed for Earth's witness. Symbolic positioning that spoke volumes about humanity's place in galactic politics. About to change that, Vale Prime Zephi arrived in a procession of floating containment units, his gaseous form shifting through spectrums of deep blue and violet. Ancient even by his species' standards, he moved with the deliberate grace of someone who had spent centuries navigating the treacherous currents of interstellar politics. His chromatic communications painted the air with meanings too complex for translation, but Zara's enhanced pattern recognition caught the underlying emotions. Hope, determination, and underneath it all, the subtle signs of someone walking knowingly into danger. He knows, somehow he knows this is a trap. The Cathara delegation entered next, led by Cathara himself. His compound eyes swept the chamber with mechanical precision, cataloging threats and opportunities with insectoid calculation. When his gaze found Zara, she saw something flicker across his mandibles, recognition, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding that yesterday's accident had revealed more than intended. Let him wonder, let them all wonder. Chancellor Vexhai of the Sorrow's hegemony made her entrance with characteristic reptilian pomp, a living reminder of her species' ancient empire-building instincts. Her scales had been polished to mirror brightness, while ceremonial scarification marked her as a veteran of the border wars. She moved like controlled lightning, every step calculated for maximum psychological impact. "Honored delegates," the station's automated systems announced, "the peace accord ceremony will commence in 10 standard minutes. Please take your designated positions." Zara made her way toward the witness chair, her enhanced senses cataloging every detail of the chamber's security arrangements. Veil guards floating at strategic positions, their containment suits concealing whatever weapons their gaseous forms could manipulate. Cathara security personnel with their multi-limbed efficiency and compound eyes that missed nothing. Sorrow's honor guards whose scales had shifted to ceremonial patterns that barely concealed the warriors beneath. 17 different ways this could go wrong, 38 ways to stop it. But as she settled into her chair, another layer of the conspiracy revealed itself. The security personnel weren't quite what they appeared to be. Subtle inconsistencies in their movement patterns, equipment that didn't match standard specifications, positioning that created gaps in coverage rather than eliminating them. The guards are compromised, all of them. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, Chancellor Vexai began, her voice carrying the ritual cadences of formal sorrow's oratory. We gather today to witness the signing of the Nexus Peace Accords, a treaty that will end 3 centuries of conflict and usher in a new era of cooperation between our civilizations. Such beautiful words, such a shame they're about to be written in blood. Vale Prime Zephi responded with chromatic displays that painted the air in shades of hope and determination. His translator rendered the color language into precise galactic common. The Vale Collective stands ready to embrace this new future, though the path forward requires courage from all parties. Kethara's mandibles clicked in the ritual patterns of agreement, though Zara's enhanced hearing caught the harmonic undertones that suggested something else entirely. The Kethara hegemony pledges its commitment to lasting peace, whatever the cost. Whatever the cost, how prophetic. The treaty documents materialized on the crystal platform, holographic displays containing the carefully negotiated terms that had taken months to finalize. Territorial boundaries, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and technological exchange protocols. The foundation upon which 3 civilizations would build their shared future, if they lived long enough to see it implemented. Zara's enhanced vision caught the first sign of trouble, micro-movements among the security personnel that indicated coordinated action. Hands drifting toward weapons, positioning shifts that created clear fields of fire toward the ceremonial platform. Subtle communication signals that bypassed official channels. Now or never. Before we proceed, Zara said, her voice cutting through the ceremonial atmosphere like a blade through silk, I believe there's something the delegates should know. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, compound, reptilian, and gaseous, focused on Earth's supposedly minor representative. Chancellor Vexai's scaled features shifted to an expression of polite confusion tinged with irritation. Ambassador Chen, she said, her voice carrying the particular tone reserved for addressing inferior species. This is a formal ceremony. If you have concerns, they should be addressed through proper diplomatic channels. Oh, but Chancellor, Zara replied, rising from her chair with fluid grace, these concerns are very much about proper channels. Specifically, the channels being used to coordinate the assassination of everyone on this platform. Let's see how they handle honesty. The reaction was immediate and telling. Kethara's mandibles spread in what might have been shock or calculation. Vale Prime Zephai's gaseous form shifted through rapid color changes that his translator couldn't parse fast enough. And Chancellor Vexai's scales darkened to the deep emerald that indicated either rage or fear. Ambassador Chen, Vexai hissed, these are serious accusations. Do you have evidence to support such inflammatory claims? I do. Zara gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber data streams she'd extracted from the station's archives. Financial records showing payments to assassins, communication logs revealing the conspiracy's scope. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, allow me to present the true purpose of today's ceremony. The evidence painted itself across the air in undeniable clarity. Weapons purchases traced to all 3 governments. Communication intercepts showing coordination between supposedly hostile factions. Financial records revealing the profit motives behind decades of carefully maintained conflict. Someone has been very busy, Zara continued, her voice carrying the analytical tone of a professional intelligence briefing, maintaining the fiction that our 3 civilizations are natural enemies, while secretly ensuring that their conflicts remain profitable but never decisive. Time for the kill shot. The peace accords represent a threat to that profitable arrangement. So rather than allow genuine peace to break out, certain parties have decided to eliminate the problem at its source. Chancellor Vexhi's scales had gone completely black, the sorrow's equivalent of combat readiness. These allegations are preposterous. Earth's ambassador appears to have developed paranoid delusions. Actually, Prince Thane said, rising from the observers section with predatory grace, Earth's ambassador appears to have uncovered a conspiracy that reaches to the highest levels of our respective governments. Thank you for the backup. Including, Thane continued, his voice carrying the authority of royal blood and military command, members of the Hegemarchy Council itself. The chamber erupted into chaos, delegates shouting accusations in 3 different languages, security personnel moving into positions that were definitely not defensive, and through it all, the steady hum of weapons powering up. Here we go. The first shot came from a Veil guard, whose containment suit suddenly sprouted weapon ports that definitely weren't standard issue. Coherent energy lanced toward the ceremonial platform, aimed directly at Veil Prime Zephai's gaseous form. Zara moved. Not the careful, diplomatic movements she'd perfected over 3 years of pretense, but the fluid, lethal grace of a human Deathworlder finally allowed to be what she was. She intercepted the energy beam with her bare hands, her enhanced biology channeling the destructive force into harmless light that scattered across the chamber like aurora. 1. The second shot came from behind, a Kithara assassin with military-grade weapons and the mistake of thinking human reaction times followed standard biological parameters. Zara spun, her midnight silk dress flowing around her like liquid shadow, and caught the insectoid's weapon arm in a grip that crumpled chitin like paper. 2. Protect the delegates, she shouted, though her voice carried harmonics that would trigger fight-or-flight responses in most species. Around the chamber, genuine security personnel began engaging the assassins, their training kicking in despite the chaos. But there were too many, too well-coordinated, too prepared. Time to stop pretending this is about diplomacy. Zara let her enhanced reflexes take over, her body moving with the terrible efficiency that marked her as what she truly was, a human Deathworlder, an apex predator, Earth's iron ambassador, terrible and beautiful in her unveiled strength. She flowed through the combat like liquid death, each movement precisely calculated to neutralize threats while minimizing collateral damage. Weapons were redirected rather than destroyed. Attackers were incapacitated rather than killed. The chamber filled with the sounds of combat energy weapons discharging, bodies hitting crystal floors, the particular harmony of violence conducted with surgical precision. This is what we are. This is what we've always been. Prince Thane fought beside her, his ceremonial armor transforming into functional combat gear as hidden systems activated. Sorrow's military enhancement technology flowed across his scales, turning him into a living weapon that complemented her human lethality perfectly. Behind you, he called, his enhanced claws intercepting a Veil assassin whose gaseous form had tried to envelope Zara from behind. Thanks, she replied, not breaking rhythm as she disabled 3 more attackers with movements that appeared to be an elegant dance. How many more? 14 confirmed hostiles remaining, Thane said, his voice carrying the calm precision of a military tactical computer. But Zara. What? She followed his gaze toward the chamber's main entrance, where a new group of figures had appeared. Not more assassins, these moved with different rhythms, different purposes. Human figures in diplomatic attire that couldn't quite disguise the way they carried themselves. Earth's backup, finally. Ambassador Chen, the lead figure called, her voice carrying the particular accent of Earth's core worlds. We received your emergency transmission. Are you prepared to implement Iron Protocol? Iron Protocol. The authorization that would officially end humanity's pretense of peaceful weakness and reveal the true nature of Earth's diplomatic core to the galaxy. Zara looked around the chamber, at delegates cowering behind overturned furniture, at assassins who'd finally realized they were facing something beyond their understanding, at Prince Thane, whose amber eyes held nothing but admiration for what she'd become. The galaxy was always going to learn. Better they learn it from us. Iron Protocol confirmed, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber with absolute authority. Let's show them what Earth's ambassadors really are. The transformation was immediate and terrifying. The diplomatic reinforcements shed their careful disguises, revealing combat gear that made military equipment look primitive. Enhanced humans moved through the chamber with coordinated precision, their movements flowing like a single organism dedicated to the preservation of peace through the application of overwhelming force. This is what we are when we stop pretending. Within minutes, the remaining assassins were neutralized, the compromised security personnel identified and contained, and the true scope of the conspiracy laid bare for all to see. The chamber that had been intended as a tomb for galactic peace became instead the birthplace of a new understanding. Chancellor Vexhai stared at Zara with reptilian eyes that held something approaching religious awe. "What are you?" she whispered. "We're humanity's gift to galactic civilization," Zara replied, her midnight dress torn but her dignity intact. "We're the guardians you never knew you needed." Veil Prime Zephai's chromatic displays painted the air with colors that had no translation, but their meaning was clear gratitude mixed with the kind of respect usually reserved for natural disasters. Kethara's compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like fractured mirrors as his mandibles clicked in patterns of submission. "The galaxy will fear you now," he said. "No," Prince Thane said, moving to stand beside Zara with his scaled hand resting gently on her shoulder. "The galaxy will finally understand that Earth doesn't need protection from the universe. The universe needs protection from those who would destroy what humanity chooses to guard." "And what do we choose to guard?" Zara looked around the chamber, at delegates who'd come seeking peace, at civilizations that had spent centuries bleeding each other white, at the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the cycle of violence could finally end. "We guard the peace," she said simply. "We guard the future. We guard the possibility that 3 civilizations can choose cooperation over conflict." The peace accords were signed an hour later, the documents blessed with the particular sanctity that comes from being preserved through violence. As the delegates dispersed to spread word of what they'd witnessed, Zara stood at the observation deck where it had all begun. Prince Thane found her there, his ceremonial armor replaced by simple robes that couldn't disguise the warrior beneath. "So," he said, "what happens now? Now that the galaxy knows what humanity's ambassadors really are?" "Now," Zara smiled, the expression carrying both gentleness and the promise of terrible retribution for those who would threaten the peace she'd sworn to protect. "Now we get back to work. There are dozens of other potential conflicts brewing across the galaxy, trade disputes that could become wars, territorial disagreements that could tear civilizations apart, cultural misunderstandings that could ignite hatred between species. And Earth's iron ambassadors will be there to prevent them. We'll be there to preserve what's worth preserving and protect what needs protection." She turned to face him, noting how the starlight painted his scales in shades of gold and silver. "The galaxy is about to learn that human diplomacy doesn't mean weakness. It means having the strength to choose peace and the power to enforce that choice." Thane moved closer, his amber eyes holding depths she was only beginning to explore. "And what about us? What happens to a Sorrow's Prince and a human Deathworlder who have seen each other without masks?" "Us, there's an us now." "I suppose," Zara said, allowing herself to hope for futures that extended beyond the next crisis. "We find out what happens when 2 predators choose partnership over competition." His clawed hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness, the kind of restraint that only the truly strong could maintain. "I love you, Zara Chen, not despite what you are, but because of it, Because you're strong enough to be gentle and wise enough to know when gentleness isn't enough. And I love you, Thane of the Sorrow's hegemony, because you see strength and call it beautiful instead of terrible. Their kiss tasted of starlight and promises, witnessed by the binary suns that had painted their first meeting in shades of destiny. When they finally parted, the galaxy had already begun to change around them. News of the failed assassination attempt was spreading through communication networks at light speed, carrying with it the truth about Earth's diplomatic corps. Humanity's iron ambassadors, guardians terrible enough to make the galaxy's monsters pause, wise enough to choose mercy over vengeance. The age of pretense is over. The age of honest strength begins now. 6 months later, Zara stood in the training facility on Luna Base, watching the next generation of Earth's ambassadors learn to balance their human nature with the demands of galactic diplomacy. No more hiding what they were. No more pretending weakness. Remember, she told them, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd faced the galaxy's worst and emerged victorious, we are not diplomats despite being human. We are diplomats because we're human. We understand violence intimately enough to choose peace. We know strength well enough to value restraint. Prince Thane entered the training facility, his presence commanding immediate attention from the cadets. As Earth's first alien cultural attaché and Zara's partner in both diplomatic and personal matters, he'd become something of a legend himself. The galaxy doesn't fear you, he told the assembled humans, his amber eyes reflecting the artificial sunlight. The galaxy fears what happens when civilizations lose their guardians. You are what stands between peace and chaos, between cooperation and eternal war. Between the best we can be and the worst we've been. As the training session continued, Zara received a priority communication from Earth's Diplomatic Security Service. New crisis brewing in the Outer Rim. Trade war threatening to become actual war. Request for immediate intervention by Iron Ambassador Team. She looked at Thane, seeing her own readiness reflected in his scaled features. Ready for another dance, she asked. With you always. They left Luna Base together, human Deathworlder and Sorrow's prince, diplomat and warrior. The partnership that had redefined what it meant to keep the peace in a galaxy full of predators. Behind them, Earth's next generation of Iron Ambassadors prepared to take their places as guardians of a future built on honest strength, and the terrible beauty of choosing mercy when destruction would be easier. The galaxy had learned what humanity's ambassadors really were. Now it would learn what they were capable of protecting. Let the universe try to break what we choose to guard. Let it try. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.